Riot Games is bringing out a new 2v2v2v2 game mode, and it has gone down an absolute treat in the community. So, what is this game mode, and how is it different from normal League of Legends? Firstly, as the name suggests, instead of it being 5v5, it is instead 4 teams of 2 people, with each person getting to ban a champion before the game starts before locking in their pick. All of this is done blind, so you can and will find yourself playing against mirror matchups from time to time. Unlike Summoner's Rift, the game is divided into rounds where each round has a buy phase and then a combat phase. During the buy phase, you either get to buy items or you're offered an augment to choose. If you're a teamfight tactics player, you'll already be incredibly familiar with augments. But if not, what they are incredibly strong game-changing effects which will in some way provide a benefit to you. There are 3 tiers of augments being silver, gold and prismatic, with prismatic being the craziest of changes. You will always be offered 3 augments of the same tier and everyone else will always be offered the same tier as you. In addition, if there's no augment you like, you do have the option of 2 rerolls. However, you only get 2 for the entire game, so do use them carefully. When you're not choosing an augment, you're instead choosing what items to buy from the shop. For the first 2 phases, you're always given 1000 gold to buy a starter item and boots. I'd always recommend buying a starter item with the first 1000 gold you're given, and boots with the second, as the starter items they've made for this game are simply incredibly strong and amazing value for money. After the first 2 buy phases, in future buy phases you instead get 3000 gold, which you can use to buy a full item. All items in the game cost 3000 gold, and there are no components to build, only the full item to buy. In addition, if you kill at least one enemy champion, you do get some extra gold which you can spend on juices, which will give your champions pretty solid temporary buffs. After you've decided which augment to power yourself up with or which item to buy, you enter the combat phase. Each team starts with 20 total health, and if you win the combat by killing both other opponents, your team does not take any damage. However, if both you and your teammate are defeated, you do lose some health. In the early game, your team loses 2 health for a loss, and it will ramp up to 4, 6 and so on as the game goes on. Riot have also made a good handful of different maps which keeps the combat pretty fresh and exciting. Where they're big enough you can still kite and maneuver as much as needed, but not so big you're ever going to be stressed out wondering where your opponents have gone. Around the maps you'll find blast cones to launch you at or away from enemies, but also healing flowers with 3 health. And when you attack them, for each attack you receive a heal and a pretty decent shield, so these flowers can be pretty important objectives. However, these maps are not straightforward. After a certain amount of time has gone, very much like battle royales like PUBG and Fortnite, a zone starts closing in on you. And you will take damage if you're outside this area, which does force players into the middle of the fight. And it does give even more value to abilities that knock back, such as Alistair Headbutt, where you can bunch your opponent straight into danger. In addition to this zone, you do sometimes get cameos from a particular champion, which will massively mix up the way you play. These cameos range from having a Lux spinning in the middle lasering anyone she sees, to NAAFIRI hunting down players with wolves, and Set throwing a massive punch at the enemy team for you, along with a good few others as well, all of which keeps these combat rounds incredibly fresh. A few other points to note is that there are no runes in this game mode, they just didn't translate too well. However, you can still get runes in your augments sometimes. In addition, the 2 summoner spells you're granted to is Flash and a spell called Flee, which is basically a super mini ghost. And an incredibly cool thing is they've also announced there's going to be a ranked system to this game mode. So if you want to commit the time to this game mode, you can find yourself up there in Gladiator tier.